welcome to another episode of Shooting
the Shit with Rachael
and Neil Young. So we're talking all things real estate photography business growth, mindset, and getting it done. Here come your favorite true entrepreneurs, Rachael and Neil Young, shooting the shit.
I have a ferret on the podcast. Like if we're kind of in a slump, like what kind of things do you do?
Talking about a boob light.
Straddling a power line.
Nice photo.
Ooh, I need that.
I'm like red right now because I'm embarrassed. I go like this. I love it.
Come in.
Sure, use your podcast voice.
You know, over here, I'm pitting out.
Drone's like flipping to the ground.
That's a great callback.
Chit-chatting.
Is that what you call that?
Hey!
Hey!
This is my warm-up.
He's ready.
I like it.
Get it going.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you ready?
All
Welcome back.
We need like intro music. Today on Shooting the Shit. Today, everybody, welcome to the podcast. We've got an awesome guest. We've got Creighton Bertrand here, who's a fantastic life coach, and he's going to help us out today. We really want to talk about the downside of being a individual photographer, business owner. Everything falls on you, and it's very easy to sink and drown and get overwhelmed. And Creighton's going to help us today to deal with some of that and how to, have that work-life balance. And this is Rachael's life coach. So Rachael, I'll let you give him a little intro as well here, because you know much better than me. So go for it.
Yes. Hello. So yeah, Creighton and I have been working together for, I don't know, we did a few sessions a while back in the winter, and now we're back at it again this spring. And my experience with him has been outstanding. Like he just brings so much to light for me and has helped me to wrap my brain around the reality of what is possible in my life and helping me to understand that I actually have control of my own schedule. In 2020, my business ran wild and I was working, 12 to 18-hour days. I was sacrificing my family, my relationships. I really didn't do much with friends. I just worked, and it was very hard on me. I mean, yes, I built an amazing business. I have a lot to show for it. It's great, but I was like killing myself slowly. So this fall, it really hit me, and I went into a little bit of burnout. I didn't want to do anything, nothing, didn't want to shoot, didn't want to work. I was like, what is wrong with me? So then I found Creighton, and we had a few sessions around burnout and me time, which we've done an episode on me time where I talked about you, Creighton, already in that episode. So it kind of prompted me to want to have you on just to go a little deeper into this subject and give some perspective to real estate photographers. Because as most of you know, if you're in the very beginning stages of your business, we want to caution you and just help you to not make the same mistakes that I've made and give you the building blocks and some, structure to set yourself up for success so you don't burn out and you don't go crazy. And then if you're already in the thick of it, this could really help you to get some perspective and to take back your life a little bit and set boundaries. Creighton is with Creating Change Coaching. You can find him on Instagram at Creighton_Bertrand, and he has a podcast. What else do you have, Creighton? What else do you have? You have some other cool stuff coming out, don't you?
Yeah, I got my, I do my individual group coaching, and then I have a course coming out. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll have that all cemented. I got all my modules recorded, but now going to be launching that. So I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, I also have YouTube, Creating Change, just more longer form videos, as well as that's where a lot of my podcast stuff is hosted. So just here to try to change the lives of other people, to realize, like what you said, is what is wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with any of us. We're all just human, and we've been created this way. So that's what I want everyone to realize, is that there's nothing wrong with us. We're all just habits. And like you were talking about your stuff, there's a way that we've got into these bad habits. We can also find our way out of these bad habits. Just it comes with, like, what we've done is bringing awareness to everything and realizing where you're at, where you want to go, and figuring out kind of what your priorities are. Because when you say yes to something, you're saying no to a lot of other things as well. So
exactly. Yeah. And I love what you said.
Before we dive into this, I would love to hear a little bit of your backstory before we really dive into the meat of all this. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in this field.
Yeah, so interesting story. I guess everyone probably doesn't know who I am. I went to school for engineering, mechanical engineering. I did aerospace engineering for about 13 years, working with airplanes, we call it airplane on ground. So an airplane that got damaged in flight, like a bird strike, lightning strike, and then they land on the tarmac and they're scheduled to fly. So then they send these like pictures of the damage to us, and we have to respond within minutes because the plane's scheduled to fly. And I think it's like they lose like $200,000 every few minutes that these airplanes sit if it's not going to go fly again. So it was very high pressure, and the airlines wanted us to be liable. So I've had times where there's like a hole in the side of the fuselage from one of the service carts that bring food to the airplane, like put a hole in it. And they're like, hey, can we fly this as is? And I'm like, no, you can't. You have a hole, like, because they want us to be liable. Because if we say yes, now we're responsible. So it's a way for them just to clear their hands and say, hey, these guys take care of everything. So tell us if it's good. If it's not, it's going to be on you. So that's what I was doing for a long time. And I loved problem solving and all that stuff that came with engineering. But I just realized that, I wanted more out of life. I didn't know what it was exactly, but I just, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a job where, you're doing it and you're like, this really isn't it. It didn't really feel right. And it wasn't until I had my daughter when I was 30. So like about 9 years ago that I had my daughter, and this free thing that cost me nothing, like made me feel such a sense of like joy and happiness and fulfillment and gratitude. And it blew me away because my whole life, we can dig into as much of my backstory as you want, but my whole life was I wasn't good enough. So to cover up not being good enough, I had to achieve more. Like that's why I was crazy competitive in sports. That's why I wanted to be an engineer, because engineers were smart and they're like looked up upon by society because you have a good degree and all this. And then I got into real estate and was buying rental properties, but all these things that I was buying was just to kind of cover this mask of insecurities of not being good enough. So it just blew me away that I was striving and trying so hard to feel good enough. And then I had this perfect little kid that made me finally feel a feeling that I never experienced before. So as soon as I felt this feeling of like gratitude and joy and happiness, I was like, what the heck is this? Like, this is free. Why is this free thing make me feel the way that I thought, getting my rental properties or making six figures was supposed to make me feel? I was like, exactly what you were saying, Rachel, like, what's wrong with me? So that's where I got fixated on reading, human psychology, human behavior, like getting into neuroscience, like figuring out like what is wrong with me? Why can't I feel good enough doing these other things, but this free thing makes me feel so good? And so after, tons of therapy, tons of retreats, all that, and like about 9 years of just studying all this stuff, I I realized that I probably was good at coaching people because obviously I've been through it. But a lot of my cube mates, when I was working, I would coach them and tell them like how amazing they were and that they had so much more potential, and they kept quitting to go pursue their passion. And then they would message me of like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing this, like, thank you so much. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, and I actually had some virtual assistants that were helping me with my real estate because I was buying rental properties at the time. And I had a thing that every month we would talk for like one day where I talked to them about their goals. Like, oh, what is it that you want to do? Like, I want to give back to them, like empower them. And one time I was doing it, they both stopped and they're like, Creighton, why don't you do this? And I was like, do what? And they're like, why don't you coach people? Like, you're so good at it. And I was like, no, because my logical brain as an engineer was like, that's silly. Like, there's no guaranteed income, there's no safety net. Like, and what kind of a job is a coach? And like, I didn't even have my life figured out. But they sparked that idea. And then I was like, I wonder. And then I just started to help out more people for free and saw the results they were getting. And So it was, I was in a meditation retreat down in Sedona. I think it was like about a year and a half ago. And I was in this meditation, and while we're in the meditation, we're supposed to send energy, love out to people. And I had this vision of sitting there and like sending energy to my brother, to my sister. And then I saw my daughter run to me, my littlest daughter. And I saw her run to me, and it just made me feel so much like joy, love, happiness. And as soon as I felt that, I was like, I started to cry. And the reason I was crying, I was like, yeah, I felt so bad that there's other people in the world that don't get to feel that way about themselves. And so after I came out of the meditation, like I'm crying way worse than I am now. And the person at the front saw me just like sobbing. And she's like asking people to share about their experience. She's like, Creighton, do you want to share what happened? You don't have to. Like, we see something happen. And I'm like, yeah, I think I have to quit my job and help people love themselves. And she's like, no, you don't really have to do that. Like, that's just a meditation. Like that might. And I was like, no, I've been battling this for like years of thinking that, I wanted to do more. And once I said that, it was so crazy because literally growing up, I always wanted to be a priest. Like I've always wanted to find a way to give back and to help people, but then you couldn't have a family. And then I stopped being religious. So that didn't really work out. But as soon as I decided to do this, like my inner self, all this, like it just felt so right, even though it was so crazy to give up, the security and logical things of having an amazing 6-figure job and benefits and all that. So that's basically how this came to be.
So you had a very strong calling to move in a different direction, like completely different direction from being an engineer to going into more of.
And everyone thought I was crazy, especially
sure.
at the company I was working. Like I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna quit. And they're like, what? Like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, I think I'm gonna be a coach. And it's so funny, like obviously I would never say think anymore, but at the time I didn't have the confidence to be like, yeah, I'm gonna be a coach. I had to put these softeners in. I think I'm gonna do this. And then they'd be like, oh, you're insane, you're ridiculous, and all this. But then I would see all these engineers that I worked with, and I was so jealous because there's maybe like 2 or 3 engineers that I actually worked with that they loved their job. Like they would read these magazines about engineering, steel manuals, like all the structural stuff. And they got paid 6 figures to do the thing that they loved. And I was like, man, that would be so amazing. Because on the weekends, like I was reading all kinds of psychology books and like how to control my mind and neuroscience. And I was like, man, I want to be like these guys, because everyone else that worked there hated their jobs. And that's why I started to get into real estate and all these other things, because I was like, I need to find a way to make money so I don't have to be here forever.
Yeah. So was the real estate kind of your stepping stone to be able to leave that job financially, or did you just make the leap, or
I
how
just
did
made
you?
the leap.
Oh, you did.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I should have. I mean, hindsight, like I should have brought up like I have properties in 3 different states, but like it wasn't the same. Like, I mean, anyone that has rental properties, like from each door, you only make, $400 to $600 per door. So you have to have a lot of doors to be making, 6 figs.
Right.
And so yeah. So it definitely wasn't like, oh, okay, I'm comfortable, I have this, so let me go. It was like, this is what I want to do. And I really, really do believe, like, if you want something bad enough, you'll find a way to make it work.
Oh, totally.
And
100%.
it's definitely a struggle. And I'm sure it's the same thing as what your guys' audience is dealing with, of like, oh my gosh, I really love photography, I really love shooting, but how am I going to make this work? It doesn't make sense. But if you're doing the thing that's your passion, like you're going to be practicing that so much more. You're going to have so much more energy into that there's no way you're not going to get better. And as you get better, your value and the amount that people are willing to pay you is just going to continue to go up. Whereas if you're forced to do the thing, like the amount of energy you put into it's like 30%. Like you're not going to get a lot of money because you don't really love that thing. You're not trying to find out how to get better. You're doing the bare minimum to get by.
Exactly. When you really find your passion, you just become obsessed with it and you can't stop thinking about, like, I cannot stop thinking about marketing ideas and social media ideas.
Wow. Then help me out because I love coaching, but marketing, I love sales, which is crazy because I do love psychologies and sales, but the marketing, I feel like I'm using my quote unquote superpower for like evil. Does that make sense? Because I know how the mind works and how
Yeah,
hooks and all that. Like if I get
that's
dopamine
funny.
going, then I can bring him in. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not for evil. It's for good. You're
Okay,
selling them
right.
something
I
great. You're
guess
helping people.
that's
It's
true.
not like
That's
you're
true.
selling their soul or something.
That's true.
Yeah, you're
I'm
helping
selling their
people.
soul to happiness, but yes,
Exactly. That's a good
Come
thing.
this way and I'll save you. Oh, that's
exactly.
terrible.
Yeah, come with me and you'll be crying every single day because you'll actually be happy. It's the craziest thing.
Yeah. The
That's
one part that I
amazing.
loved about your story was how your virtual assistants told you that you should do this. Like they
Yeah.
believed in you, they saw something in you and they spoke up and said something. And that same thing happened to me with photography. I was
Oh,
doing
really?
I was just shooting for fun. I'd shoot my kids, and my neighbor, she was like, Rachel, you could make money doing this. And I'm like, yeah, right. Whatever.
Right.
She's like, no, you're really good. Like, I have a friend who wants photos done. Do you want me to give you her number? And I was like, okay, sure. And that started it. And I was like, what
Wow.
do I charge? She goes, just charge $100 for the
Yeah.
first one. And I decided I'm going to charge $100 for my first 10 portrait shoots. And that'll give me time to learn and understand it. And then I'm raising the prices after that. And I haven't stopped. Like that belief that she had in me, if she hadn't said something, I don't think I would have gone on this path that I'm on.
But I think that at the same time, you have to give yourself credit because you had to have felt it. Because I'm sure there's other people that have said, hey, Rachel, you're good at this, like cooking or taking care of like other things.
Yeah.
But because like, and I think that's why it's so crucial for people to find their inner selves, like know what they actually want. Because I really believe the universe, whatever you want to believe in, is giving us all these little tales. And luckily, this lady was out there to give you that thing, but you had to feel it in order to want to move forward with it.
Oh, for sure. And the timing was perfect because I was just absorbed, like
Yeah.
obsessed with learning more about photography, so the passion was definitely there. She just kind of sparked it in me like, oh, you're right. I could make money. Good call. Let's go.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's cool. Power of belief.
I feel like there are those like hints out there that you these hints keep coming by you. And if you're open to receiving them, right, you can follow that path, take a hint, and you're like heading in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so hard. And I even run into it now, like obviously with my 6 fig engineering job, like life was good, money was coming consistently, whether I did anything or not. That when it doesn't come, like how do you respond to those challenges? Like, do you continue to believe or do you say, okay, that was a good idea, let me go back to something else? And so I'm actually want to switch this back on you guys, that I'm sure your viewers are curious. Like Neil, like I know you've been in it for a while. Like, how did you persevere? How did you push through when, it was those challenging times where you were doubting, like, what is this really what I'm doing? Because you have that passion, that's what you want to do, but we need that proof. We need validation. We need all these things to pad our ego, to pad our checkbooks, to pad all these things. Like, how did you continue to persevere when things were tight?
Well, I mean, even this winter was harder than I expected it to be. I've already been through one of the winter where it's a slow season for us and full time, right? Because I've done it before that part time. I waited tables at the same time. And waiting tables was that same scenario where I had a good waiting tables job. It was actually a really good gig, made good money. And some people love that gig and they do it for a lifetime. But me,
I loved it.
every day was misery for me, though.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not what I wanted to do. And I was good at it, and I can pull off the personality and people enjoy me. But to me, I was dragging my feet to go every day.
Mm,
So real estate photography never felt that way to me. So it's a different
mm,
world. When I have see on the calendar, I have shoots tomorrow. I don't go, oh, I got to work tomorrow. I
I
go,
love that.
okay, what time am I getting up? Great. And I'm ready for a new adventure. So it's a totally different world when that's how you feel about going to work. Like you're saying about what amount of energy you're going to put into it, right? Yeah, you're going
Right.
to put 30% or you're going to put 120% based on how it makes you feel to go to work. But so this winter was super difficult. And it's just starting to end right now. It's been very long that it's been very quiet, and it's hard because all of the you start questioning yourselves. All those fears
Yeah.
start creeping in, and you start going, maybe I'm not really good at this, and
Hmm.
maybe I made a mistake. And we're still trying to launch some new offerings, and they're not picking up like I wanted to, and taking a lot longer than I expected to get traction. And I'm listening to these hints going, okay, I'm getting a lot of these hints that maybe this isn't the thing, and maybe I should follow the path of least resistance. And it is hard to make the call that this new offering that we're doing for social media management has been very hard to get traction with. And I thought that was the new thing to expand this year, 50% more income by getting, half of my clients to start doing this other offering as well, and get some more consistent income. And it just hasn't hit the road yet. I don't want to
Hmm.
give up on it, but it's hard not to get demoralized when you're putting all this effort in. You've got the time to focus on it because it's slow, but it's not winning like you expected and you wanted to and you planned it to. So I don't have an answer. I'm still fighting through it.
But I also
Right.
think just listening to your verb, like you used the word yet, like I haven't figured it out yet.
Yes.
It's using these little nuances in our language and how we talk to ourselves. And there's so much psychology and so much behind this that it's so good that you've acknowledged that it's hard and all that. Because a lot of people, there's this huge push on willpower and just pretend it doesn't exist, but that's just backing up the dam. Like a lot of people be like, oh no, everything's great, like it's awesome, but then they look at their bank account and they're like, this isn't great. Nope, everything's great, everything's awesome. So I love to hear that you're like, yeah, this is hard, it's a struggle, but I haven't figured it out yet.
Right.
So I think that's a really important thing for the person out there that is struggling. Like just tap back in of like, okay, this is hard, it hasn't worked yet. Like, do I want to go back to waiting tables? Do I want, no, that's not what I want. Okay, then let's keep going here. You got to
Right.
remind
Totally.
yourself like what it is.
Totally.
I think literally life happens for us to figure out what we don't want so we can kind of start to figure out what we do want. Like there's a really good quote. I forgot who's the guy that did the statue of David. Was that Michelangelo or Da Vinci? One of those guys. Anyway,
Yeah.
they
I
were
don't know.
asking him. I remember there's
My
a
mom's going to
art.
kill me. I should know,
Oh, sure.
but
Sorry.
she's an artist.
But
I'm like, oh no.
there's this article of it that they're asking him, like, how did you create the statue of David? How did you know what marble piece to use to chisel it out? And he goes, the statue of David, he was always in there. My job was to remove the impurities to show him. And I really believe that that's kind of how life is. We start as this just big, massive marble, this big rock, and life's happening, chiseling away these things to create this beautiful, perfect person that is inside of us. And so we have to remind ourselves that as these things, even the hard things, like this is just defining who I am. This is creating this beautiful masterpiece of myself. And I can't see it yet, but I know in like 3 or 10 years or 20 years, like something amazing is going to emerge from this.
No, and
And
that's kind of how I feel with this service, this whole offering that we're trying to do. We've been just kind of whittling away at it, trying to figure out what's the right solution, because it's a whole new thing for us to offer for these agents. We know that there's something great for them there to help them and to help our business, but it's been trying to find the sweet spot that it's attractive to them and still works for us and that kind of stuff. And it's like I've got to a point where almost like when you're an artist, you start working on something so long that you can't see it anymore, and you kind of got to like, all right, back up a little
Mm-hmm.
bit and take a little breather and let's look at it again. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
What about you,
yeah.
Rage? What do you feel like is something for that person out there that's, banging their head against the wall? It hasn't got to them where they want it to yet. Like, what do you do to persevere and keep going?
I just think about it as like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Like
Mm-hmm.
what you're trying to build is massive and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to do the little steps every day and just keep at it. And when it gets hard, I think that's the time that you need to kind of reevaluate why you're doing it. Like you're saying, remember your purpose. Like for me, I got divorced and needed a job and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have a choice. It was like sink or swim, So for me, it was every day I wake up and I work on this business and I come up with a newsletter. I come up with, go out and hand my cards out somewhere, put cards at a restaurant, go to networking events, like whatever I could do. I was so hungry because I had to feed my children and I
Right.
didn't have a lot of money in savings. It was a little scary, but I knew and I fully believed inside that it would work. and I just didn't stop. So I would say just don't stop working on it. Just know that every step that you take today is going to build up to, eating the whole elephant.
Yeah, that all those mistakes are necessary for you to get like, and I think that's where a lot of us run into the issue of, we see the Instagram, we see this instant gratification thing,
right.
but we don't realize that all those mishaps, all those things were required to figure out the answer. But usually when we do something, oh, this didn't work, like this is terrible, it's like, no, this didn't work, thank you, it's giving you the answer of what not to do. So let's try something else. When you start welcoming things, then you stop being this victim of like, oh, everything's terrible. You're just like, okay, I didn't figure that out. Because if we go back to when we were a kid, it's the same thing when we learned to walk. Like, I love watching all three of my kids learn to walk. Like, every time they take a step, like they have this huge smile on their face, and they go to take a step and they fall and they eat. Can I say shit? Yeah,
you can say what
shit.
part of our
It's
name.
in the title.
Yeah, okay. They eat
shit.
They eat doo-doo.
There you go. Keep it PG.
Yeah. So no, they fall and they eat shit. And do they get mad? Do they get discouraged? They have the biggest smile on their face and they crawl back up and try again. Like, when did that stop in our life, that we stop thinking that we have to get from A to Z, like, and everything
Perfectly.
doesn't have, yeah, exactly. But the kids have the answer. Like, everything's an opportunity, everything's a challenge, everything they're just so curious about. And once you can get that curiosity back in your life of like starting to actually see things for the blessing it is, oh my, like, it's just night and day. Like, I mean, I'm just so much happier now, even though my finances isn't as amazing as it was as an engineer, but like, I just see things through such a different lens than woe is me, nothing's working out from that other time in my life.
Right. Yeah. I grew up riding horses. And one of the things, like, if you got bucked off your horse, you had to get back on no matter what. Otherwise, that horse is going to know and he can take advantage of you. So
Oh,
I
is that
think,
why?
yeah, you've got to get
I
back on
never,
and show him who's boss.
I knew you had to.
Yeah. And it sucks. Sometimes you're terrified, like
Yeah.
they totally throw you for no reason. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, I got to get back on this beast. Here we go.
Yeah.
So just overcoming that fear, I think, helped groom me for this, what I'm in now too, like helping me overcome challenges. And one thing in the last year that I've started to do, like, I've become pretty religious, and I believe that God puts challenges in your way to help you grow as a person and learn a lesson. So I don't look at a challenge as a negative thing anymore. I look at it as, okay, I have this conflict with this client. What am I trying to learn here? Oh yeah, I prayed for patience. Here it is. Here's your lesson in patience. Yeah. So I always look for the psychology behind it. Like, okay, what am I learning out of this? How am I going to do this better next time? So, and I'm carrying that over to my team as well, because it's so much with the team. It's so much about clear communication and understanding how the other person works so you can better communicate with them. Right. So it's been a really eye-opening thing to fully understand.
It's funny because I was just going to say, on that note, the other week I had a really rough week and all this stuff was just not going the way I wanted to go. And I just was like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I supposed to be paying attention to right now? That you know what I mean? That I need to adjust. Like, sometimes I feel like it's like, take a hint or the universe is going to slap you a few times till you figure it out.
Yeah. And what did you find out then? Well, how did you change your perspective?
I'm still working on it. It's still, that's what's led to this. I'm still figuring it out. I'm going, okay. And that's why I stepped back a little bit and was going, all right, is it not the right timing right now for this? And I just need to step back and focus on, we also have this other new offering for headshots and lifestyle branding stuff that's new as well. And that's getting traction very, very easily. It's picking up slowly, but it's just like, I'm like, okay, well, maybe we just need to put a little more attention here, because maybe the timing's not right. Either we're not quite ready or they're not quite ready, or the service itself isn't quite where it needs to be yet, and we'll just keep picking away at it, but more in the background, is instead of kind of hitting everybody in the face with it so hard. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'm figuring it out. I'm just still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I feel like you don't always see the lesson that you learn until you're through the thick of it.
Oh yeah.
When you come out on the other side, then you'll look at it and be like, oh, okay, that's what.
But I feel like the more you start doing this practice of like exactly what you two are talking about, like starting to get awareness and not be like, oh, here we go again. Life is why is this always happening? Oh, it's so unfair. When you starting to see it as like, wow, this challenge sucks. Again, like for anyone out there, like don't
No, yeah.
try to hide that how terrible things are. It's supposed to be like it's supposed to be difficult. No different than when you're at the gym. Man, this is heavy. You're not like, wow, this is really light. Like, why am I sweating, almost having a hernia? You're like, dang, this is hard, but I want to get it over with. So when these challenges come, embrace it for the difficulty that it is, but be excited because you know once you get over this, like something beautiful is going to happen. And the more you start noticing that, like exactly what Rachel's saying, that now when challenges or things come, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I'm losing my mind, but I'm so excited because I know on the other side something amazing is going to come out of this, because it always does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how do you know like something beautiful and awesome if you don't have something to compare it against, which is the misery?
Oh yeah, exactly. You have to have the bad to appreciate the good. Like I mean, especially us being in the Pacific Northwest, like there's a reason why we love the sun, because it's crappy all the other days. So we have to have the bad to appreciate the good. And I actually met my wife down in LA, and I remember moving to LA. And when I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys take this for granted. It's so nice every day. And I'd go out to the beach every single night when I first moved there in January. This was Rachel and I were talking before that I lived out of my car. So after I graduated, after I got my engineering degree, I was so tired of this because I went to Oregon State. So I was so tired of the weather here. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to move to LA, because if I can make it in LA, I can make it anywhere. And it had sun because I wanted sun. So I went there. I didn't have a job. I didn't have an apartment or anything, but I backpacked through like Europe. I think I've been to like over 18 different countries. So to me, I was like, oh, this just be an adventure. So I moved down there and was living out of my car, and I would park so anyone out there that's struggling, here's a little hack, that if you park your car at some Holiday Inns and some other hotels, I would sleep in their parking lot. And then in the morning, I'd get, dressed up to like normal casual clothes, and I'd walk in and I get free continental breakfast. So I get the breakfast, and then I'd go to the Best Buy across the street and I'd apply for engineering jobs. And then I'd write them down. And this is back MapQuest it out. And then I'd go do my interviews through the day. And then around 1 o'clock, I'd go sleep on the beach because I was so tired. I had a Honda Civic and it was full of everything. So I was in the driver's seat with the seat like this, because I couldn't put it all the way back because I had so much stuff in my car. So the sleep was terrible. But then in the daytime, like around 1 or 2, I'd go sleep on the beach, like literally like a bum. And then I'd go to a gym. I got a gym membership was the first thing, because I need to take a shower to get ready for my interviews and stuff. So then I'd go do that. And then like around 5 o'clock, I go back to the hotel. I go inside, watch TV and start checking emails, stuff like that. And then once it got late, I go out the back exit and rinse and repeat. But so when I was there, I would also go to the beach every single night to watch the sunset, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so gorgeous. And I did that like every single day. This was in January. It was like 60 degrees. And after I living there for 4 years, my wife, Fernanda, and I remember one time it was 80 degrees out and it was in the summer. And she's like, what do you want to do today? And I was like, well, it's not nice enough to go to the beach today. Like, that's insane. Like, I would never, like someone from the PNW, like we would never say that. Yeah. But again, because it's so nice there all the time, you take it for granted. So that's a long story of, you have to have the bad to be able to appreciate the good.
Totally.
Yep. I had the same experience. I moved to Sacramento, California. And I mean, all summer I'm outside in Washington, and I moved there and it's just sunny all the time. Yeah, and it would be beautiful outside. And I'm just going to stay inside and watch TV all day. I'm like, this is weird. I don't even appreciate the sun anymore. What is happening?
How long did it take? It took me probably about 2 years to stop going as frequently. And then that 4th year, like I was a sun snob, that if it wasn't like 90, then I can't be outside.
I was there for about 2.5 years. So I don't know how long it took, probably 1.5 years. Because we were in a house that we purchased. So it was probably the last year we were there. Yeah. It was weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So
you were spoiled though. You had MapQuest. I had Thomas Guide. Did you know Thomas Guide in LA?
No.
Oh my God. It was a big, huge map book. You had to go page by page to like connect the dots to get places.
Oh wow. That would have
been. I was in LA for
it was
10
bad
years.
Enough to get to the interviews as
yeah.
is. And I had so many. I remember I would set it up that I had 3 interviews every single day. And actually, Neil, what you're saying, was a waiter from the time I was 16 all the way through college. While I was at Oregon State, I was still a waiter. And actually, I went to LA and I was applying for jobs. I got my first job at a prosthetic company because I wanted to do prosthetics to help people. So I went into this place and asked them if I could work for them. And they're like, well, we don't have engineers, because it was just 2 guys running the business. And I was like, I'll do anything, because I just wanted to get in my foot in the door. And they're like, well, we could pay you $9 an hour. So I was making less at my first engineering gig than I was when I was a full-time student. So I actually got a job when I was in LA being a server at night and then an engineer during the day, just to make things work.
Wow.
So, but I loved, mine was the same when I was working as a server or waiter. Like I never really wanted to go to work. I was like, oh, I don't know, like, because I was partying and stuff. So I was like, I don't really want to go. But as soon as I got there, oh my God, like I was just so happy. I loved entertaining.
Well,
and
the
helping.
environment, waiting tables, I've always loved all the people I worked with. We've always had a blast and
yeah.
laughed our asses off. Like that's the part I miss. I just don't miss the actual
community.
Physically waiting the table.
I just thought every person was a challenge to me. Like, how can I make this person laugh, or how can I crack this code? So
interesting.
The psychology stuff was always there.
That's why it's so different from one person to the next, because that's the thing. I mean, a lot of those people, that's still their gig, and they still love it. You know, it's a good gig. But you know, I just think it applies to everybody. If you're, whatever the job is, you could be a doctor and everybody thinks that's the best job on the planet, or you could hate it and you'd be happier being an
engineer comedian. And the same thing. Like,
exactly.
Everyone thinks it's crazy to leave what I left, but I mean, you only have one life to live. Crazy concept. So do you want to
happiness?
Exactly. So do you want to, Rach, talk about some options for people that are running into, time blocking and not burning? And I think you made a really good comment, because you talked about communication is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite statements is being clear is kind. So I love that, because we even talked about a little bit on that in our sessions of setting some boundaries and to avoid burnout, especially when you're so hungry like you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you want to go into kind of the stuff we talked about? Or
I think it's a big challenge when you're especially when you're starting out and it's just you, everything falls on you. And if you're going to pay your mortgage, you got to make the money. So it's very easy to fall down I don't know what the wording is, but to get in this trap of just working nonstop all the time. And our lifestyle is we wake up really early to go to the shoots, then we come home, then we have to, if you're starting out, you're probably still editing all your photos and uploading all your photos. So you really got no life left. Then you go to bed and wake up and do it all again. So there you do eventually realize that you can only last that long it's not, you can't go on indefinitely like that. You have to find a way to balance that out, or you will crash and you won't be able to survive like that forever. So I think it'd be great to help people to find that balance, and maybe some pointers and what they should consider. Maybe
I went through this in 2020, just got bombarded with clients from COVID, which was great. It was great, but I had no boundaries. I just let clients call me at all hours of the night. I would answer them when I was at dinner with my family. I would take phone calls at all hours. I just didn't have any boundaries around my business. And it all came from a place of fear, because I was afraid if I didn't answer the phone that I would lose that client. And I had enough. It got to a point where like I could miss a few phone calls and still survive, but it was still, I had to uphold that.
It was
reputation.
A behavioral pattern.
Well, and the customer service that I offer, I was known for that. And I'm, everyone says, oh, I love working with you because you always respond right away. So I felt like I had to withhold that standard, and it became to the point where it just wasn't realistic for me to do on my own. And I still struggle with it, but it's gotten a lot better because I have more help, and we did sessions together. So can you explain kind of what overwhelm does to us from a psychology kind of perspective?
Yeah, so it's interesting because there's actually 2 different responses when we're stressed. We have one, which is one where we're release the cortisol, which is the stress that we're usually used to, like oh, I'm so overwhelmed. And then you start to get the fatigue and your body doesn't function so well. But there's another type of stress, like athletes and high achievers, probably like all of us here, that we face, that when we get stressed as well, that we can see it as a challenge. And when there's so much study on this, when you see it as a challenge, you don't release the cortisol. You start to get the norepinephrine, the adrenaline, all the stuff that gives you more energy to like attack it. Whereas the cortisol is more where it just goes to your organs and stuff and like makes you want to curl up and kind of defend yourself for the saber-tooth tiger or whatever. So when we get a lot of stress, you got to like mindset. I mean, obviously that's what I do, but like mindset is everything, how you're approaching these challenges and everything, that if you're letting it cause a lot of cortisol, like you're going to start to just fade away. You're going to get paralyzed. You're not going to want to challenge it. You're going to get into that victim, woe is me mindset. So I would say that's probably the first thing, is start to notice how you're dealing with the stress. Are you shutting down, or are you getting, like what we were talking about, excited about the challenges that are coming? That would be kind of the first thing. But then after that, like I think what we kind of talked about on our stuff, Rachel, is like getting into like setting up some actual boundaries or trying to identify what is causing the stress. I think even you and I started to talk about some of that. So if you are noticing that you're getting a lot of stress, and notice how you're responding, because that's a behavioral pattern, but try to go upstream and try to figure out, okay, well, what's causing this thing? Like, okay, maybe it's the emails late at night, or I'm not seeing my friends, or my relationship with my spouse is non-existent anymore, or whatever it is. And go there first, be like, okay, well, this is what I'm losing, and because I'm doing, too much right now. I think the awareness part, we need to start with that.
Yeah, definitely. I like that that's interesting that there's two different kinds of stresses.
Yeah, there's
I
two
didn't realize
different
that.
types of responses, and
Responses. Yeah.
I've been reading all these sports psychology books that ever talk about like these athletes. It's the same thing with them, that these athletes that come into a race, and they have this mindset of like, oh, this is going to be so easy. I'm the best. Like they're really cocky, like, oh, I'm amazing. And this is going to be easy. Then when they get in the race and they realize that it's taken a lot more effort than what they perceived, that their brain starts to release more cortisol because they get stressed, because they're like, oh crap, this was supposed to be easy, but it's not easy. So their perception versus what was actually required differ. And that's what causes some of the cortisol. And then they start to slow down because they're like, well, what's the point now? Like, I can't do it. Does that make sense? But the athletes that come in and be like, first, you have to have the mindset, confident, I'm amazing, whatever. But then they know that this is going to be hard. So they'll come into the race, I'm amazing, but this is going to take a lot of work, but I can do this. So when they're in the race, they have the confidence, and then it's hard. They're like, yeah, but I knew it was going to be hard. Then those are the ones that get the adrenaline hit, and they get this extra push to keep going. They don't shut down because they prepared for this.
Okay.
And that's why a lot of these people that are talking about create goals and all this, like that's great. And the manifestation is beautiful, but you have to think about the challenges. You have to think about the things that are going to come in between, because otherwise you're going to run up to these. And if you haven't prepared or thought about it, and you thought everything's going to be roses, then you're going to get the cortisol. You're going to start shutting down. Be like, well, what's the point? I didn't plan for any of these adverse effects. I thought this was going to be so easy.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like prep yourself to know that it's not going to be easy. And then your body response will
But we don't want
differently.
anything easy. And it's so crazy because I mean, of all the people that I coach, like no one really wants things to be like, I had it easy as an engineer and making, like, we don't want that. Complacency is death. Like everyone really wants the chaos, but they claim they're afraid that they don't have the courage, or that they don't have the confidence in themselves to handle the chaos. But when you start realizing anytime there's chaos, like you have, especially if you're a believer in God or the universe, whatever you want to believe, like everything happens for a reason. You're going to find a way to persevere. And it just gets so much more exciting and fulfilling when you're living that way.
Yeah, no, and I think totally though, when something becomes easy and it just becomes by rote and you're doing it over and over and it's just easy, then it's boring. It's not fun anymore, right?
Yeah.
I always say if all of us were the same, it would be really boring because we would just all be little robots walking around doing the same thing. And that's what makes people beautiful, is all the differences that they have, and all the different personalities and different looks and all this. It's like we're all trying to fit in this one little box. No,
Which
not
is so
everyone, but a
crazy.
lot of
Like we're,
people. Yeah.
yeah, you're so right. Like on Instagram and all this, like
Mhm.
we want to be like them, but like we need to, identify what our uniqueness is, like
Exactly.
celebrate that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
Right.
hard to have
Yeah.
that confidence to realize that you have enough worth to actually be that version of yourself.
Exactly.
So yeah, let's go back to, so if you're someone that's dealing with burnout and you have tons of clients that you're dealing with all their stuff, I think it's so important to, I call it like having effective communication. So again, back to being clear as kind. So you can have amazing customer service. Like there's, I don't want to do all this, but like there's so many studies on children, and like they will take abuse over neglect. Like if they've had
Mm.
children that your parents will beat the crap out of them, do all this terrible stuff, but they'll continue to come back because even negative attention is better than no attention. Like that's why what they do to criminals is they put them in solitary confinement. They don't make them go talk to someone or get beat up. It's like go get isolated. Like that's literally death. And that's actually what happens with people that get suicidal, is they start to disassociate from society and they start to just be isolated. So anyway, so with your customers, you just need to inform them of what your boundaries. And I think even Keller Williams does a really good job of this with their agents, of letting the client know, like, hey, Rachel, I'm so appreciative of your business. You're amazing. Like, I want to let you know I'm available from X to X. I don't check my email from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. But as soon as it's 5 a.m., I'm going to look at my email, and you can be sure as shit that I will respond to you by 7 a.m. Is that something that you're okay with? And like that's just so clear. Like you're letting them know, like it's no different than playing any football or basketball game. You're letting them know the rules of the game. Like I can't go into play soccer with someone that's never played and just go grab the ball, and they can't get mad at me because we never talked about the rules. So if you explain the rules not only with your clients, but you do this with your spouse and friends, like there's no room to get upset at each other. You know what the expectations are. You tell them, hey, I don't respond from 5 to 5, and then I'll get to you by 7. Is that something that's okay with you? And then they'll say, no, I need it by X or whatever. And then you can start to deal with it at that point.
Yeah, I love that. That's clear communication. I mean, there it really is no room for error if you're just straight up with them and let them know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
And that's all they want. Like everyone
Yeah.
just wants to be in the know of what to expect. Oh, okay, cool. So I know if by 7 you haven't responded, then I have full rights to freak out and attack you.
Right.
Yeah, by all means.
Okay,
And
so
then
let's
talking
say,
about the,
oh,
can I just
yeah,
say
go ahead.
something
Go
on
ahead.
those
You're good.
lines? Sorry.
Say
Talking
it up.
about talking about the fear element that Rachel had mentioned, when you're, especially when you're first getting going with your business, this fear that, if you don't say yes to everything, you're going to lose your customers, and you're not going to have enough money to pay your bills or whatever, or you're not going to succeed, right? um I have that same thing about, originally I opened my calendar 7 days a week
Mm,
because I needed to make as much money as possible. So I needed any day that somebody wanted to book, I would let it
right.
happen, because, 2 days out of the week, I might not get booked at all. But
Right.
as I started to get booked more and more and more, I didn't have any time for myself. And so then now this past year, I started blocking off Sunday. And so just recently I had somebody say, are you going to be available any Sundays? And to this same point, I said, hey, actually, I've stopped doing Sundays because I need some time to be with my family. So I'm no longer booking Sundays for myself. And as soon as they understand that, of course, they were like, well, yeah, you need your family time. And it was gone. But my fear was that I was going to like lose those clients if I couldn't do Sundays anymore. You
Yeah.
know?
And
Mhm.
and I actually like that you said that, Neil, because I was going to mention this. And also realize when you're starting a new business or doing something, you're going to have seasons. So maybe you come in and like Neil saying, like, oh, I'm really hungry. I need everything. So I'm going to open up Monday through Sunday. Okay, but give yourself parameters, like be clear and kind to yourself. Like, okay, I'm going to push myself, but I'm only going to do this for like 2 months or 3 months or a setup. And then also try to find opportunities throughout the week when you're dead to go do stuff for yourself. Like, okay, normally on Saturday and Sunday, I go hang out with friends or I go on a hike or whatever. I see that tomorrow I don't have anyone booked. So I'm going to go up to the mountains and I'm going to go do something. Still try to shuffle to make things work, but also, like you're saying, like notice that this is just a season. and it's only going to be, you know, a few months, and then you can start to get rid of Sunday. And then after another couple months and you started to get your business going, okay, now I can get rid of Saturday. And now you just keep kind of trimming it back and telling your customers what you're doing and informing them.
And if you're like me and you're doing that 7 days a week, or you're doing 6 days a week or something like that, and you can still you can take it back in chunks. Even you can just block off half of your Sunday. So now you can only get booked maybe 1 or 2, but you still got some family time. And that's kind of how I did it, that I started just blocking off some chunks originally. And then I just wiped out the whole day.
The me time is so important. So important. And I love, Creighton, how every time that we had a session, you check in with me and say, okay, how did your me time go? And I was like, well, I went okay. I'm like, well, this on Wednesday night, I had to work until 7:30. And you were like, but you said you needed to make as much money as possible because it's slow season. And I was like, yeah. And you were like, well, then that's okay. Give yourself some grace.
Yes.
And I love that because I'm like, thank you. Like, I'm here beating myself up thinking I got to check in with Creighton. He's going to be upset with me because I didn't stick to my plan. Like, I know you're not going to be upset, but I feel like I'm letting you down because we set these rules and I like to follow the rules. And yeah, so I was, you know, but you're so gracious the way you're like, but you took 3 other days to yourself and you didn't answer the phone after 7:00, right?
Right. Yeah. We're just so hard on ourselves. And my whole thing is I want everyone to be unapologetically themselves. And I think a lot of the times we don't look at it from all the different angles. We just look at, hey, I'm a piece of shit. I'm not good enough. I'm comparing to this person, all this negative stuff. But like, I think obviously from all the years as an engineer, like I had to look at things from every day. Like, what if this happened? What if this, like, what about this? What about fatigue? Like all these different things. So I do the same thing with when I'm, you know, doing the psychology or talking to people of like, okay, like, well, your example of, oh, I didn't do this. Okay, well, what was the goal here? The goal was to get me time. Okay, well, where else in the days or in the week did we get some me time? Like, is this story that you're telling yourself that you're beating the shit out of yourself for actually true? And almost 100% of the time, it's totally bullshit. But it just feels so big. Anything in our head always feels so big, because that's just how we're wired. It becomes active and then we just fixate and ruminate. And now it's like, oh my gosh, everything's going to die and everything's terrible.
Yeah. And I
So
feel like
sometimes you need to be slapped.
Yeah. And I feel like our brains are pre-programmed. I don't know if this is from the way we were raised or society or the news and the shows we watch, but I feel like it's so easy just to go to the negative. Like
But that's all you see.
Like
yeah. The news.
First nature. Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's fear.
Drama
fear
on
sells.
TV shows. And, you know, it's so easy just to go to that negative. Yeah. So if you can start to make that shift of where you're thinking more on a positive mindset more often, it's like,
and it's really interesting. There's, they did this, I forgot, I might butcher this a little bit, but I think it was like in the 70s or 80s, they're doing this, open brain surgery of that. What they did is they opened someone's skull and they connected different parts of the brain to this piano. So if you played these notes on the piano, it would zap that part of the brain and make you have a certain feeling. So they had like lust and love and happiness and anger and all these different things. And you know that once people played all the things and felt all the different sensations, the one that they always went back to
was what? Pain?
Anger.
Yeah, it was anger, aggression.
Anger.
Huh. Out of like lust and love and all this, like I think that the something in our brain. So exactly what you're talking about. Like there's a reason why the fear works in the media. Like something in our brain, I think it's obviously survival of like, we want to have our territory, keep everything safe and all this. So that's probably been part of it. But like, it's crazy because like once you start tapping into this love side and more of the happiness, like it just feels so much better. I've never done the piano, being able to test the different things, but I'd be interested of like, if I'd be like, no, I love, like love is the answer. Right? But maybe once I clicked it and I'm just like, oh yeah, there's that anger. There we go. I forgot really how good that felt.
Right? Ooh, anger.
Yeah, exactly.
Get that adrenaline.
Yeah.
So the fear, totally, like that's why the media and all that. So I think it's a little bit of both. One, it is for some reason innate in us, and they know that, and that's why it's always shown to us of fear and anger and all these things.
Yeah, gets a rise out of people
watching the news.
I know. I haven't watched the news in 6 years. No,
Isn't
thank
it
you.
amazing?
I
I'm
can't do
good.
it.
Isn't it
Yeah.
amazing?
So
Yes.
depressing.
I
Don't
know.
even get me started. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll
Like,
look on my phone, like the little Apple News pops up, and like the first three are just ridiculous. And
insane.
then there's
Yeah.
one that might be decent, and I'm like, ugh.
They'll usually get me, I'll see like some psychology or some study, and I'll be like, oh, okay. And then I'll click it. But
Yeah.
then like it'll say like President Biden. I'm like, oh, he's still our president? Like I don't even know. I'm just like out in la la. Like Fernanda, my wife will say stuff like when I stopped watching the news, she thought I was crazy, but now she doesn't watch the news either. But at the time, I think it was during the election that I think Biden was picking his running mate, and she said it was Sarah Palin. She's like, oh my gosh, like Biden's running with Sarah Palin. I'm like, huh, that's so crazy that, yeah, I could see that that might work. And she let me go on that way for like a good couple weeks
my gosh.
before I found out that that wasn't the case. So
I was just at a shoot and they're like talking about, they're like, yeah, and they shot down that balloon and all this stuff. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And they're like,
yeah,
you don't know what we're talking about? Because they're talking about shooting down those
yeah.
spy balloons or whatever. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. They're like, what hole do you live in? And I'm like, I don't look at this.
Happiness,
Yeah.
happiness.
never.
You should come in here. It feels good.
Yeah.
It feels better than that anger one that you guys choose.
Ding, ding on the piano.
Yeah.
I'm picturing that note too, you know, they're like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a piano. Should I go play it for you guys?
Yeah. See, fine. That'll definitely make us
dun, dun,
angry for sure.
dun.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Neil? We're up. It's 5:15. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So it's, I mean, if you're up for it or if you're ready to.
What's the most important thing that you could give to these guys that would help them?
Yeah. So I think the most important thing is for anyone to just start writing 3 things that you love about yourself. Like literally every day, take a couple minutes, touch your heart, touch your body, give grace to your body for your heart beating, your knees working, like just love your body. And then take a couple minutes to write 3 things you love about yourself. And I'll do this for all my clients. And the craziest thing is at the beginning, like, you know, you're in trouble if you can't even come up with 3. And if you can't come up with 3, go phone a friend. I'm fine with that to start. But a lot of people, once they start writing, because I make them do it for like, you know, our whole time, so like 3 months. So the first time it's pretty superficial. So like what you want to write is like, I love my kindness. I love my compassion, like get deep stuff, not like, I love that I bought a boat. Like we don't want that. We want something about your essence, about you. But the cool thing is when you start doing this for like months, you can start going through and seeing that you finally stop resisting and you start coming up with so much more things to love about yourself. And that just gives you so much more power, so much more confidence and happiness. Because at the beginning, you're like, I love my eyes, my kindness, and compassion. And you might do the same thing every single day for like 2 weeks. But after 2 weeks, you're sitting there, you're like, what are 3 things? You finally get curious and you actually put something different. And you're like, whoa, that is amazing that I've done that, or I do love that about myself. And now you can really start getting in tune with yourself. So anyone out there, start doing this, find a way to love ourselves, because we're so bad at it. We're so much in this comparison, this rat race of we're not good enough, we're terrible, we need to be where other people are, but everybody is perfect where they are. And as soon as you harness that energy, you're just going to have so much more potential.
I love that. Yeah, you had me do that for the exercise. And at first it was awkward. I was like, I love that I'm nice, like you were saying. Yeah. And then it grew and it started getting to where I was like, I was saying things that I was almost manifesting things. So I'd say, I love that I'm great at public speaking. I love that I go out of my way to give compliments. I mean, I do all this stuff, but it was something that I wanted to get better at, you know, that I knew that I could give more to that area. And I would like almost grow into that. So I'm going to continue that because I actually quit doing that.
That's awesome.
Cool.
And I even go in and out, like literally when I'm telling people or client, like I'm just coaching back to myself, like, well, yeah, when's the last time you wrote it? But yeah, I pretty much do that one on a daily basis now.
Do what I say, not what I do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Creighton, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you.
Amazing. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for letting me shoot some shit with you guys.
Yeah. And tell the audience where they can find you and maybe just plug your coaching and what you offer. Cause I think a lot of people could benefit from your
Yeah,
wisdom.
yeah. If you guys are interested in coaching, you can find me on my Instagram at Creighton_Bertrand, or you can go to my website, Creighton Bertrand, and the pictures are beautifully done by Miss Rachael Ann here. So
Oh,
thank you so much.
Nice.
If anyone needs some lifestyle shoots, definitely reach out to her, because I think that literally every picture on there is from her. So yeah, reach out to me if you want some coaching on help with blockages in your career. I help people with real estate, all different kinds of stuff. So if you need help, reach out. I'm happy to do what I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you
definitely.
so much.
Thank you
All right.
guys. Appreciate you so much.
Yes, you too. We'll see you on the next one.
All
Bye,
right.
guys.
Mhm.